Did I request thee, maker from my clay, to mold me, man? Did I solicit thee from darkness to promote me?
It's not fair you made me like this. You should have made me real.
It is with considerable difficulty that I remember the original era of my being. All the events of that period appear confused and indistinct. And by that, of course, I'm referring to the time I attempted to watch and review 120 movies in the span of 1 year. Last year, I started a project where I attempted to watch and rank every Disney Channel original movie. Here's the ranking if you're interested, if you want to pick and find your favorite movie and see how much you can be mad at me for where I placed it. I had the lines stuck to my camera lens, by the way. I did not memorize that whole sentence from Frankenstein, if it wasn't obvious. I basically did it in 2 years instead of 1, because I also had to pass all of my classes to continue my undergraduate degree. Life is so hard, why can't I just do the things I want to do, like sit down and watch DComs all day? Yeah, attempting to watch all 120 Disney Channel original movies broke my brain. But along the way, the plan was to make videos about movies that I had a lot more to say on, because in that final almost 9-hour video, I only reviewed each movie for around 2 to 3 minutes because it was already almost 9 hours, and I wanted to make videos on movies that I had more to say about. However, that was supposed to happen before the final DCOM video came out, and I only got like 2 done. So we're gonna go back and try and right some wrongs there. And today we're going to talk about Pixel Perfect. I realized in my script I have nothing explaining the point. I'm here to compare and contrast Pixel Perfect with the book Frankenstein written by Mary Shelley. Pixel Perfect has somehow become an eerily prescient tale in our modern society that has only become more relevant as time has gone on, weirdly enough, in the exact same way that Frankenstein has been for centuries now. I have a long list of movies to pick from, but I decided to go with Pixel Perfect because of the new Frankenstein movie that's coming out. Who would have thought that Frankenstein and Pixel Perfect would have been relevant to our modern day society? Not me, that's for sure. Since Frankenstein is the mother of all sci-fi, she's mother, if you will, it makes sense that a lot of Frankenstein would be in Pixel Perfect. However, there's a specificity in the way that Pixel Perfect has somehow, possibly accidentally, possibly not, stumbled its way into having so many comparisons with this novel that I just feel the deep desire to compare and contrast all of the similarities and differences. Because there's a lot of stuff in Pixel Perfect, weirdly enough. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on that just kept blowing my mind as I watched the movie at, like, probably 2 a.m. Because it's what, like, movie 60 or something like that, or 70? It's pretty far along in the DCOM list, even though it's considered one of the older ones. Famously, like, an exact third of DCOMs were made before the Wand IDs existed, before I was born, even. And that was all before Pixel Perfect. So the point is that Disney Channel did a lot of movies like this, but for some reason there's something real freaky about this one, and that's what we're here to unpack today, basically. Just realized poor Sonic is like face down on the floor. This is also the I really hope I get this video out before Christmas video, or else this whole Christmas theming is gonna feel real weird. Also, if I seem a bit uppity today, it's because I'm currently boiling alive, like a crawfish in a seafood boil. That's because it is currently a beautiful winter wonderland outside. It's like there's multiple inches of snow, yet my heating won't turn off. It's broken, and some maintenance people came in today and were like, "Boy, it's hot in here," and I'm like, I know, but because it's snowing so much, they can't send somebody to fix it until way later tomorrow. So it is like almost 80 degrees in here, and I'm somebody who already runs quite warm to begin with. I like my room to be chilly, and it is too hot for what temperature it is outside. It's like, it's insane. So if I seem a bit upset during this recording, that's why. It's because I'm literally sweating. You might actually see a bead of sweat go down my face, which is insane because it's like freezing outside. I have the window open. I'm gonna get sick, I swear. Pixel Perfect follows Roscoe as he creates a virtual singer named Loretta, who will act as the lead singer for his good friend Sam's band, the Zetabytes. They're told by a Poundland Simon Cowell C-movie I Can Pretend to Be British Too that Sam isn't showy enough to be the lead singer, and Roscoe builds the perfect replacement for her in Loretta, both physically with a hologram and emotionally with someone who he grows deeply attached to, which obviously makes Sam upset because she has a thing for him. Teen drama ensues, along with the existential dread that slowly sinks into Loretta as she becomes aware of her limitations as a hologram and desires to be human. Oh, and there's an extremely cheesy early 2000s pop music and CGI graphics all thrown in there for good measure. It's a decom. Let's talk about Frankenstein for a bit, because I have some insights that I want to annoyingly pontificate about further. I'm assuming most of you already know the story pretty well. However, I sometimes forget that the most common interpretation of this book is actually the 1930s movie, which I'll be using footage of throughout this video, primarily just to avoid copyright. But just know that this movie is essentially an in-name only adaptation. It's still a good story, but it really doesn't have that much to do with what happens in the actual novel. And most of what I see reflected in Pixel Perfect is from the novel. I was relatively old when I first learned this and didn't read the book for the first time until high school, so to learn that Victor Frankenstein doesn't say it's alive and that the creature is mostly an intelligent being who can advocate for himself and hold entire conversations with his creator can be shocking for people who only know the movie, which, again, while being a good story, is not a good framework for understanding how I'm going to be talking about this novel and comparing it throughout the video to this movie. We first meet Frankenstein after he's a broken shell of a man who is close to death after being in an extremely convoluted game of cat and mouse with his creation, who is only ever referred to as the monster, or the creature. I might go back and forth between those two terms. He's rescued by a plucky group of explorers, who he then tells the rest of the story to. The frame narrative is, I think, supposed to ground the story in a sense of reality, which was the thing that a lot of early novels did, which was pretend the story was in some way real by providing a framework that the documents were uncovered by somebody and are being published for the first time now for an audience to gawk at. My theories as to why this is because it was maybe supposed to put the audience in a sense of immersion, like you were reading real historical documents and not just a fluffy piece of fiction like the dreaded beach read. Either way, the frame narrative does ground the story in a sense of reality for the reader, not through the literary framing itself, but also through Victor's narration and how it's portrayed as a cautionary tale, specifically directed towards a curious audience of young explorers who are looking to search to the ends of the earth for the newest advancements and to unlock the secrets of the universe. Frankenstein, and by extension the novel, asks the age-old question of, just because you can, does that mean you should? Victor can confidently answer no, but that's only because he went to the furthest extent of searching and unleashed something he can never quite quantify or ever take back, and he has to live with that until he takes his final breath. Pixel Perfect asks a similar question. Roscoe's father is impressed by his development, but one of the reasons he never ventured into the world of holographic humanoids is because of the ramifications that Roscoe starts facing once he creates Loretta. It truly takes the hubris of a teenage brain to not think of all the consequences before creating his ones and zeros pop star. Or in the book's case, a dilapidated mental state of a young man studying alchemy on the sneak in his college, lest his colleagues think of him as some sort of necromancer. Frankenstein is a relatively average person who has a wonderful life in his future with a woman who may or may not be his cousin, depending on which edition you end up reading, that he essentially throws away to create the monster, who then destroys everything that Victor loves, aka all of his family members and his wife of just a few hours, in retaliation for getting no meaning behind his creation. The monster definitely reacts the same way a lot of nihilistic humans do when they're confronted with their mortality, which is to destroy since there's no meaning to the world inherently, so their actions don't matter at the end of the day for them. For more of my thoughts on existentialism, check out my My Babysitter's a Vampire video on Rory Keener. I'm so blessed that I can consider this a semblance of a job. Roscoe is framed in a similar way to Victor in relation to this setup as somebody who gives up a normal life in an attempt to reach for technological advancements, specifically with his relationship to Sam, who, like Victor's wife, is just waiting for him to retreat into her arms. Since Pixel Perfect is a decom, Roscoe does, instead of dying on a boat in the middle of the Arctic Ocean surrounded by strangers who possibly haven't absorbed the most important part of his cautionary tale, which is to be cautious. It's so goddamn hot in here that my cold water is like becoming warm. Like I'm gonna be drinking warm water throughout this video. I didn't make myself a cup of coffee, specifically because I would probably pass out from exhaustion if I tried drinking that while recording, which is very weird of me to not be drinking coffee during a video, because that's pretty much all I do during my videos. But anyways, Roscoe. Let's talk about the character of Roscoe, the main character, one would say. The most obvious one-to-one parallel between Roscoe is Victor Frankenstein himself, and Roscoe as a character is a lot like the inverse of a little show I like to call Kyle XY. Have you ever heard of it? It's a show that asks the important question of, what if Frankenstein's monster was actually a cute 16-year-old boy? And what if he went to high school? Pixel Perfect instead asks the question, what if Frankenstein was a cute 16-year-old boy who went to high school? Frankenstein and the creature are foils of each other, which is the term I'm not going to bother explaining super in depth here, so you're either going to have to dig up your old high school English notes, or look it up yourself if you don't understand. So in the sense that Frankenstein and his creation are foils of each other, these two texts can be read as foils of each other, since their respective main characters come from the same direct source material. They're similar characters put into a similar situation, which in this case is being forced to embody the gothic horrors of creator and creation, while also navigating the highs and lows of high school football. I'm only joking. Roscoe doesn't play football. Or go to high school, it really seems like. I'm almost certain this movie is supposed to take place during, like, summer break or something. There's so many decomps that have these random quirks in them that make me think that they were written to not be movies with children as the main characters, but then once the scripts were bought by Disney Channel, they were then converted to have, like, tween-age protagonists. So seemingly mundane moments are immediately transformed into weird, questionable actions that we have to, like, ponder. Like, Roscoe drives his square car all over the place, and the Zetavites are constantly booking gigs, and they get signed to a record label and are just, like, going to these performances. Nothing to do with their parents, of course. And yet they're all supposed to seemingly be, like, 16 years old, I think. These are just little nitpicks that aren't really that important to point out at the end of the day. They don't mean much. But if every character was around 10 years older, this entire movie would make a whole lot more sense. Which is not something I would say for the TV show Euphoria. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want a video where I try and justify that hot take. I spilt water on myself. I'm not going to say more about Kyle XY since I actually haven't seen it. I just know of its reputation as a campy modern TV show reimagining of this infamous gothic tale. But just know that I know about it, and maybe one day I'll let it haunt me the same way all these other shows have inevitably done so. But to get back to the source material, both Victor Frankenstein and Roscoe have notable relationships with their fathers that I feel like influence their actions to a degree. Also, both of their mothers are no longer in the picture by the start of the story, if that means anything. I think his name is Alphonse Frankenstein. I don't know how to pronounce most European names, I apologize. Alphonse Frankenstein is the picture-perfect example of a father figure for Victor, and in many ways reflects how shitty of a father-like figure Victor is to his creation, the monster. There's a little bit of this present within Roscoe and his father, except the main difference is that his father is inherently linked to the creation of it all, because it is his father's technology and the company he works for that Roscoe essentially steals to create Loretta in the first place. So it's his father's technology that he's fiddling with to create life. First, a cat pet that keeps killing itself, and then later, sentient life, Loretta. Am I too low in frame? I just realized I'm like chillaxing. I did not build this frame for me to be like, we're talking about Frankenstein, whatever. There's a decent dose of daddy issues present in their dynamic. Because this movie was made in the early 2000s, we have to have the classic trope of the corporate father who is too busy trying to rise the ranks of his company to actually be a parent to their child. But since Roscoe is smart and self-sufficient enough to not only handle his own, but to become literate enough in his own father's technology to master it and master above his father's abilities, I pick up on the fact that he doesn't necessarily feel as though he needs someone to coddle him. He more desires the comfort and clarity that a companion who understands and relates to you would have. And because this movie's an upper, eventually the father figures that out and they work that out and he can be that for his son. In a cynical reading of this text, his father only starts to work with him once this aspect of his company's technology is accidentally made mainstream. So he has to partner with Roscoe to negotiate the rights and deals of Loretta with the suits to protect his own livelihood. Roscoe also saves his father's job by having his name innovate in ways that he was too afraid to do, showing how Roscoe's childlike, reckless abandon is what his father was lacking in his job. It's a very Zuckerberg, wannabe cool, Silicon Valley angle to take his character if you want to. It's there if you squint a little bit. In a more wholesome approach, he worked with his son to pave a more moral and humanistic ground for the future of his life and work to operate in moving forward, with the tender care and knowledge that only a father can provide, which is the way that Father Frankenstein operates throughout the novel as well, by constantly encouraging Victor to just get married and have kids already, which, let's all be honest, would be a much better way for him to be spending his time as a creator at the end of the day. And I would see it as obvious that Frankenstein isn't directly an anti-technology story. It is just a cautionary tale. To use caution, not outright throw in the bin. Obviously, everyone throughout the novel encourages him to go study abroad and pursue his academic endeavors, so much so that his future wife is willing to wait to marry him until he is satisfied in his seek of knowledge. But once they see it starts to slowly ruin his life and he dilapidates mentally very, very intensely, very quickly, they all ask him to retreat and return back to the family structure that provided so much stability for him in his early years. If you hear my dog snoring in the background, sorry. He's looking real cute and sleeping right next to me, and I'm not going to wake him up. Again, the frame device of Frankenstein telling this in the future as an old man and describing his, youthful endeavors with creating the creature, it shows how, it wasn't necessarily a bad thing that he was seeking, academic knowledge. It was the fact that he went too far, basically. AKA, the modern Prometheus allegory, right? I feel like I don't have to explain that. The whole modern Prometheus thing. Like, you get it. Y'all, I washed my hair today, and do you ever have that, feeling that, the hair on the day you washed it never looks as good? It looks better the next day. I feel like my hair looks too clean right now. It's just not, it's not sitting right. Loretta is the virtual hologram that is created to be a pop star lead singer for the Zetabytes, much to the bitter chagrin of Sam, who was previously their lead singer. Loretta is eventually found by the public when there's a glitch, and she becomes the new hottest sensation. And of course, the record labels just love her. I wonder why. Yeah, the record labels want to use the technology that was used to build Loretta to build other pop stars for all the exact same reasons that current tech companies want to replace all of their human employees with AI. You don't have to give them sick leave, they won't get mad at you if you book them to work on the day of their grandmother's funeral. And there's no such thing as labor laws when they're not real people. This is all starting to sound a bit familiar, doesn't it? Loretta, in many ways, is a perfect example of how modern AI technology has adopted and been accepted by the wider public and tech society, while its glaringly obvious faults only get questioned by those who care enough to examine its existence and not just ride the wave like everyone else. Yes, this is going to be a YouTube video discussing AI, I'm sorry, I'm also sick of this conversation. However, when the comparison is just so adept and right in my face, I basically can't ignore it. This is where Loretta separates as a comparison towards the creature, who has always just embodied the scary, dark reality of technology furthering way farther than it ever should. The whole damned to be sentient part is there, but the literal one-to-one comparisons in Frankenstein are not, which is why Pixel Perfect is so damn fascinating to me. I mean, it's obvious why the book is still being read and adapted in the modern day, right? I haven't seen the new Del Toro flick, but it does seem to connect something back to the extremely weird and weary time we're currently living in. I'm assuming it does, at least. In a way that the novel has always been able to do since its conception in that cold, cold summer of 1816 when Shelley composed it. Both monsters desire and crave humanity and originality, but can never reach it because they will only ever be imitations of humanity that are unable to conjure up something original. Yet they are human enough to feel these emotions of separation and understand that they themselves are an outsider. Which is where the Greek-level tragedy really comes into play at the end of the day. The story tries to have the debate of whether or not Loretta is actually human or not, and because the movie is from 2005 and made by Disney, a lot of the conversation doesn't really go past like a conversation you'd have with your cousin who has fallen in love with their AI chatbot.
I believe in yesterday, and my brother, hey now you're a rock star one way or another.
Isn't it great?
Loretta, these are just lines from other songs.
Yeah, but I put them all together.
Loretta, you can't just take bits and pieces of other songs.
Why not? You made me out of bits and pieces of other people.
That's different.
How?
It just is.
But Pixel Perfect at least toys with the emotions of the audience with this dynamic by, one, garnering sympathy for not only those who fall into the trap of believing their own fictitious creations and relationships are real, but also for the fictitious creation itself, who may long to be seen as human and desire the ways in which their own partner can love and create at them. I gotta think of how the whole sentence is gonna sound before I just say it. I bet your cousin is gonna shit their pants when their AI chatbot girlfriend starts saying the shit that Loretta says to Roscoe.
Maybe I'll write you a new creative plugin.
No! You always want to change me. Why am I never good enough for you?
There's always room for improvement.
You said I was perfect.
But then again, like, how real is all of this anyways? As in, like, these emotions? Are they, at the end of the day, just inserting ones and zeros to replicate something that they've been told is what humans do? Once the creature learns to read and speak and sneaks away to read Paradise Lost, Lives, and The Sorrows of Werder, all of those themes and motifs of the text is present in the soliloquy he gives to Victor once they meet up again for the first time since his creation. The creature, while feigning intelligence, is only copying and repeating what he's heard from what he's read, just regurgitating things he's been fed because of his circumstance. But I bet this has you wondering, how is any of that different from what us humans do? Aren't we all just composite sketches of everything we've consumed? I mean, I constantly feel as though I'm just regurgitating information I've been fed and am deeply unoriginal in everything I do. I especially feel that way when a random white guy with millions more subscribers than I do puts a video out on a topic I've been working on for months before. Like, damn, we really did have the same idea and we both decided to execute it at the exact same time, but since you have more resources and support than me, you got the video out sooner and now mine will just get compared to yours in my comment sections for eternity. But it's okay, I'm not bitter or anything. Genuine though, that doesn't bother me that much. That is just a phenomenon that's happened a lot with me in general. I guess if you're asking yourself the question, what makes Loretta and the creature different from us when we all just reiterate on things we've consumed and apply to our own existence? The better question to ask yourself, and is the one that I try to ask myself more often, might be, would Loretta and the monster have ever created the idea to make a video comparing the gothic novel Frankenstein to the movie Pixel Perfect? Or would either creation have decided to watch a video on said topic instead of studying for their final exams? Or watch it while doing the dishes, or playing Subway Surfers. I know you guys. The darker, illogical sides of ourselves are what make us human. A robotic figure trained on algorithms would not choose to waste time in the same way that we do, or enjoy art in the same way that we do, which is most of the time distracted, and while doing something else, while also being trained on algorithms how to exist. I'll give the robots that one, we do have that in common. These creatures don't have experience built within them, existing from infancy to adulthood once and over again all at the same time. They've been dropped into the world fully formed, which is to say that they have no form whatsoever. Sadly, their deformities are what separate them from us and makes them less human instead of more, like it does for us. It's unfortunate that these characters have been brought into a world that cruelly created this disparity and tossed them aside without even realizing how cruel said actions truly were. Hence the Paradise Lost quote from Book 10 at the top of the video. Disney Channel, of course, wraps up all of their movies in that classic upper kind of way. Sam doesn't get killed the same way Elizabeth or Henry does, and Loretta gets a relatively happier ending than the monster does, who is most likely going to kill himself. Loretta... she ascends into a godlike status, which is an element I really can't get into because me reading the Wikipedia page for Apotheosis didn't really give me much insight enough to make a whole section. In this video, I feel like a better YouTuber with a better YouTube video could dive into that trope of like characters ascending into a godlike status as a way of like triumphing over evil or like escaping a negative situation. I don't know. Someone do that, please. Well, but before that, she snatches Sam's body so she can experience the outdoor world for the first time before said ascension happens. Yeah, there's still plenty of weird darkness present in this movie in a way that only a DCOM can have, while still being extremely bland and milquetoast. Again, in the same way only a DCOM can. We love to see it. There's a reason why I obsess over these movies so much, because there's so much, again, there's so much shit in them. There are so many things that I haven't even dived? I have yet to dive deeper into that I would love to, but not about this movie. I can't, y'all. Listen, I don't think the final 20 minutes of this movie really needed to happen. To have Loretta snatch Sam's body and bring her out of the coma, only to ascend to a godlike status, just really breaks reality in a way that's uninteresting to me. I can believe that human-like holograms exist in 2005, or even that the gorgeous Avril Lavigne-type singer-songwriter girl wouldn't immediately get snatched up by labels, since that was all they were looking for during this era, instead of trying to turn her into a boring ex-Tina type. But I draw the line at holograms becoming the second coming of Christ, who apparently only uses said power to provide killer harmonies for live musicians singing boring acoustic songs. There's a better way to do the self-sacrifice and death of Loretta that isn't extremely depressing and convoluted like it is in the source material. They just didn't achieve any of them through this even more convoluted conclusion, that I'm assuming adds more drama to the film and got people to actually finish it instead of just skipping to watch American Idol during commercial breaks at least. The 2000s were such an interesting time for media in general. And the creature's death isn't necessarily a self-sacrifice, like it is for Loretta, but at least that extremely depressing and harrowing soliloquy he gives at the end wraps up the story in a very, very gothic sort of way, because, you know, that's what the novel is. So I guess the movie's finale does fit the weird made-for-TV, decom, sci-fi angle just fine, even if it isn't really that interesting to me. As I was recording the finale, my neighbor decided to start playing music really, really loudly, like it was shaking my walls, that's how loud it was. And I got extremely mad and offended, and so I had to stop recording, and it didn't stop for hours. So I am just here to record the outro now. Sorry about that, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I deeply, deeply appreciate it. Check out my merch store. I have some fun new merch coming very, very soon. There was a bit of a delay with some, of the work being made, but I promise within a couple of months or so, new merch will be out, and I think it'll be stuff that y'all will be really interested in purchasing. So check out what I have on there now. It'll be a great way to support the channel, as well as liking and subscribing generally. I am very excited to reach 4,000 subscribers soon. That is insane to me that we're growing so fast. And yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time, where hopefully we'll be talking about Good Luck Charlie, or the Everyone's a Star 5 Seconds of Summer album. It depends on which script I finish first. It looks like the Good Luck Charlie script might be getting done first, just because I have a lot more to say on Everyone's a Star than I initially thought, which was already a lot to begin with. So prepare for that video, I guess. But yes, Good Luck Charlie video coming soon, so subscribe so you can be tuned in when that happens. I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
So